Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Creedy, and ideas are bulletproof. It is,
It's such a great response because he keeps pulling the trigger. He's like, "Why
yeah.
won't you die?" And he comes back with this amazing line. Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
All right, here we are.
Oh, yeah.
As of this recording, it is late October, early November 2023.
Yes.
And Ricardo and I just closed out spooky season with
Oh,
our
yeah.
top 10 horror movies of all time, which was a fun episode. And now we're moving on to November here. And we got to talking about what we could do. And we just looked at the date and said, okay, this is a movie we can do for the upcoming date there. So this movie was directed by James McTeague.
Mm-hmm.
It was released March 17th of 2006. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for V for Vendetta.
Man, bro,
Right.
I was so excited.
Remember the 5th of November.
Every November 5th, man, every November 5th, it just goes through my head. Remember the 5th of November. And I was so excited because it's been a few years since I got to watch it. And I was very, very excited to go down that path again. So when we decided we were going to do it, I was like, oh, yes. Because I remember really enjoying it the first time I watched it, but obviously your experiences can change. So I was really looking forward to really watching it again, and I was so excited. I was so happy that we're doing this one, and there's a lot to gush about, from performances to the movie itself, visuals and all, and we're gonna get there. So I'm excited.
And I think the key thing that we need to realize here when we're talking about this movie is that it came out in 2006.
Yes.
So there was a lot of ideas, concepts, and visuals that
Mm-hmm.
Mateague threw at us. And let's not leave the Wachowskis out because they were
Yeah.
producers on this movie as well. So they threw a lot at us, but
Oh yeah.
clearly people are still talking about the movie all these years later.
Oh, it's good, man. It's that good.
Alrighty, well, let's get started.
Let's get it.
So we are in the near future, and Britain is ruled by the Norse Fire political party. They are a fascist and authoritarian regime led by High Chancellor Adam Sutler, and he controls the populace through propaganda and imprisons or executes those deemed undesirable, including immigrants, homosexuals, and people of alternate religions. So we're
Yep.
looking at a 1984 type society,
Yes.
and I would like to think that this is something that could never happen, but unfortunately, discrimination and prejudice still exist in 2023.
Yeah,
So,
and this was kinda like taking all those fears and, like, magnifying them,
right,
and that's what it felt like. It was like the most extreme version of what people, fear when they have those types of, topics of conversation. In very, good, comparison to 1984, even down when you see when you see Sutler for the first time, it's that giant screen, right? And he's just up there, and he's
yeah,
shouting his propaganda, and he's like, "This is what's going to be done," and this and that, and you're just like, "Oh, wow." Like, it's very aggressive right off the bat.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so we have Evie Hammond, played by
Mhm.
your girl Natalie Portman.
Love her.
Yes, and she is the daughter of parents who became activists after her brother perished in the St. Mary's School terrorist attack. This happened 14 years earlier,
Mhm.
and they were detained when she was 12 years old and later died in prison. So one evening, a vigilante by the name of V, wearing a Guy Fawkes mask, he
Oh,
rescues her from assault by the secret police. So this is V's introduction, and what an
and
introduction it was.
what an introduction it was.
Right.
I'm drawing a blank. What are the name of the officers? They go by a specific name.
Um,
Fingerman?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. I think you might have gotten that right, actually.
I think it's the Fingerman, right? I think it's the Fingerman. And hey, if I made a mistake, I apologize. I just saw it today as a drawn
Yeah.
blank, but I digress. But
Yeah,
it was a
it's,
great. It
the
was
the Finger is the secret police branch of the Norse Fire government, so
there. It is. Okay, so I
agents known
was
as
right.
Fingermen, you got it, yeah.
Fingerman. Bam! I feel good about myself.
Yeah, man.
So the Fingerman. So it was a great introduction to V, but it was also an introduction to who these fingermen are. They're supposed to be representative of, quote unquote, an officer, if you will, and they have badges and whatnot. And when Evie is walking the streets when there's supposed to be a curfew, it
Right,
isn't one of those cases where they're like, hey, you need to get home. There's a curfew. Do you understand the penalties, anything like that? It becomes very aggressive
right.
and very, very crudely sexually aggressive. And they're making innuendos towards her, and it makes it very, very, very uncomfortable. And again, you're in a position where, well, these guys are supposed to be, authority. But they're about to take advantage of this woman and inflict violence upon her. And you're like, well, this isn't going to go well. And luckily for her and for us as viewers, we get to see V show up. And when he shows up, man, what an introduction. Probably one of my personal, and I hadn't seen it in a while, but if I had to think about it, probably a personal favorite of an introduction to a character. When you think of great introductions, you'll think of movies like Wesley Snipes' Blade and whatnot. I think that V has an introduction that is also just as good. It's exciting, and you just see him, do the work that he needs to be done in the scene, and it's like, oh, it's just great to watch.
Yeah, and, you see the slow motion, you see the knife choreography, it's just so cool, like, he's a superhero almost,
Yeah,
so
and it feels like a comic, it
right.
feels like a comic book character, and it is. So yeah, when he shows up and he's got his I also love the way that he speaks. I love the way V speaks in this movie.
Right,
How articulate he can be,
right,
how
Hugo
his
Weaving, gotta give a shout
Hugo
out.
Weaving,
Yeah,
his cadence to way he speaks, and that going along with the body language and the mask, and then doing all those action scenes and choreography with his voice. Wow, it's a chef's kiss of a combination.
yeah, exactly. So Ricardo and I, we're gonna recite some lines as we're doing the breakdown here, and,
Mhm.
I'm going to, attempt, V's introduction monologue here where he, um,
Yes.
does an incredible job with alliteration here.
Yes, the alliteration.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is after V saves Evie, and
Mhm.
she asks him who he is, and he drops this line and said, Do you realize the irony of that question?
Yes, it's
Why are
so
you,
good.
why are you asking a masked man who he is? He's wearing a mask for a reason, you
Yep.
know? So so he says, But on this most auspicious of nights, permit me then, in lieu of the more commonplace sobriquet, to suggest the character of this dramatis persona. Voila, in view a humble vaudevillain veteran cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate. This visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi, now vacant, vanished. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified and has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin, vanguarding vice and vouchsafing the violently vicious and voracious violation of volition. The only verdict is vengeance, a vendetta, held as a votive, not in vain, for the value and veracity of such shall one day vindicate the vigilant and the virtuous. Verily, this visosage of verbiage veers most verbose, so let me simply add that it's my good honor to meet you, and you may call me V. To
Whoo.
which Evie responds, "Are you some kind of crazy person?"
It's it's so great because, like, that whole moment again, I
Right.
love that sequence.
Incredible. Right.
It's such a good sequence, and look, Hugo's the man because I would have struggled with that. Like, just all that alliteration, I was like, "Man," and he's just going at it. And what's so great is, like you said, is it feels like all of this because she goes, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Do you understand the irony of what you're asking me, a man in the mask?" And then he drops this whole spiel, and he's so elegant with his words, and
Yeah.
she just goes, are you a crazy person? Like, it's so great. It's so great. He goes, well, they would have you believe I was. But hey man, that's a tough monologue. Even reading it, like as you're reading it
Yeah.
right now, I was like, bro, this would have got me.
Yeah. So after this moment, he has her witness his destruction of the Old Bailey via bombs.
Mhm.
And if Ricardo, if you could read that "remember, remember" line there, that would be great.
Yes. One of my favorites. Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, remember the 5th of November. Gunpowder, treason, and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
So thank you, Ricardo. So it's this really epic scene. We have
Mhm.
Tchaikovsky playing. It's
Yes.
1812 overture. You see fireworks. V is dancing as
Yes.
you know, "Da-na-na-na-na-na-na,"
Yeah,
you know,
it's so good. It's so good.
it's great. And Evie is just standing there horrified at what she's
Yes.
seen.
It's what makes their interaction so great when they first meet one another is because I'm trying to put myself in her shoes and in that perspective. I too would have thought he was crazy.
Right,
Even though he came to her defense and did everything that he did, the moment he starts speaking and it's like, well, that's a little odd. It's a little, and then they go and he's like, Shh, listen to the music and he's going along with the beats and the explosion and he's dancing and she's like, this guy is out of his mind. And
right.
from an outsider perspective, again, if I was her, I probably would feel the same. But it's so entertaining. This whole sequence is just great to watch.
So, it's just a really awesome introduction to the character of V. So
Yes.
after he saves her, you know, with the fight choreography, the knife choreography, he delivers this monologue, and then we don't let up. It moves
Mhm.
right directly to him bombing a place, dancing, the overture's playing, and obviously
Yeah.
Portman selling this moment while it's happening there. So, the following morning, on the 5th of November, V hijacks the state run television network to address the nation. He is
Mhm.
claiming credit for the attack and encouraging the populace to resist Norse fire by joining him outside the House of Parliament on Guy Fawkes Night in 1 year's time. So he's telling them, you have a
Mhm.
year to get together with me. Evie is knocked unconscious while aiding V's escape, and he takes her with him to avoid her arrest and likely execution.
Yeah.
So V moves on. And by the way, he tells her, listen, you can't go anywhere. And
Yeah.
she's like, why? He's like, they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
And how long do I have to stay? He said, you have to stay till November the 5th. And it hits her. Oh, I need to stay here a year because
A
the
full
November 5th
year.
just happened. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
he kills three key people
Yeah.
in the regime. The Norse Fire propagandist, Louis Prothero. I believe that was the man that just got out of the shower.
Mhm.
We have Dr. Delia Surridge. This was the saddest one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, he he was just gentle for whatever reason. He showed pity on her.
Yeah.
He gave her a rose. He said, "I already killed you 10 minutes ago." He gave her an injection. Will it be painful? No, will not. You know,
Mhm.
so he showed pity on her. And then with Evie's assistance, he kills Anthony Lilliman, the Bishop of London. This was the most uncomfortable one because Evie
Yep.
dressed up like a I guess it was almost like an exchange of services
Yeah.
type deal, like an escort, you
Yeah.
know,
It
and then
it it it
right,
it reminds visually, it's almost like the young schoolgirl kind of appeal.
right,
She had the pigtails and the uniform type of a skirt and whatnot. And like you said, you just feel uncomfortable because
right,
the image of her is that of innocence and of young. And you have this bishop come in and obviously has, the worst of intentions. But yeah, that scene does go
right,
down.
and she says, "No, I'm not gonna do this," and obviously he wants to force her even more now, and, and unfortunately, she betrays V by telling him
Yeah.
he's coming to kill you, you
Yeah.
know, the person that you guys are talking about, and, he doesn't believe her, so
He
just
thinks
3
it's a bit. He's such
right,
a creep about it that he thinks it's a bit, and he's like,
right,
"Ooh, I love this game. What are we playing? We're doing role playing." And she's like, "No, I'm telling you, he's coming to kill you." And even in that notion where she's explained to him, he still tries to take advantage of her. And she was right. And he said, he goes, "Oh my God, you were telling the truth." And she was like,
Right.
"Yeah."
Yeah, so I thought this was really cool, like, if he just taking down the people one by one, and it was a
Mhm.
different mood for each one. It wasn't just an assassination each
Yes.
time. So, the first guy, I thought it was cool because he was not well because he's reciting his lines from the
Mhm.
show as he's saying it, and
Yeah.
he's, "I wish he was right here in front of me," and there's V right here, right there in front of
Yep.
him, and he gets him, and then, you know, the doctor, he lays her down calmly, and he takes care of her like that, and then obviously he saves, Evie, from Lilliman.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I appreciated it as a viewer that each death was different and unique in its own way, and it also showed, how V viewed these individuals, because as you said, when it came to the doctor, the female, he was very gentle with her, and, she doesn't really plead for her life, but she pretty much says, like, "Oh, it's not like it wasn't my intention." He's like, "Well, it's not necessarily about your intention of what you wanted to do, it was about what you did,"
Right,
and because of that, this has to happen. And it's almost like it's a code. It's a code he has. He goes, "No, this is what needs to happen. You have to pay with your life, with everything that happened to everyone, to all those victims. You have to pay with your life."
right,
But he did it in a way where it was like, "You're not going to feel any pain. You're just going to go to sleep."
right,
And she thanked him for that.
right, and she knew she was wrong, and
Yes.
she accepted her fate, which is almost like
Mhm.
why maybe he did it because he knew she would. Maybe
Yeah.
he thought she would or knew she would, or maybe he just showed pity on her because she was a woman. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, but you know what? In that scene, the fact that she just accepted everything, that
Hmm.
showed that, like, it's like, okay, I accept my fate. Thank you for having
Yep.
mercy on me for letting me go like this.
Yes.
So, alrighty. So Evie flees after betraying V, hoping to be forgiven by Norsefire. Assigned to capture V, we have Chief Inspector Eric Finch. He uses Surge's journal and information from former covert operative William Rookwood, who is actually V in disguise,
Yes.
discovering that 2 decades earlier, Surge led biological weapon research and human experimentation at the Lark Hill Detention Facility on behalf of Norsefire, and this led to the creation of St. Mary's virus. So, although dozens of political prisoners died during experimentation, an amnesiac in Cell V developed mutated immunities and disfigurements, as well as physical enhancements, and eventually destroyed Larkill during his escape. Peter Creedy, head of the secret police, faked a terrorist attack by releasing the virus at targets, including St. Mary's, and used the resulting public fear to embed Norsefire in power. So this led to
Yeah.
Norsefire coming to power. Simultaneously, the company manufacturing the cure enriched party members such as Prothero and Lilliman. So
Yep.
we get V's origin story here. We get
Yes.
to find out how he got these abilities. So he didn't become invincible, but he became like superhuman
Yeah.
from these
Yeah.
abilities. He didn't die but he should have because it was a big fire. So
Hmm.
it burned all of his skin off,
Yeah.
but he still survived it, which is now we know that's why he wears the costume and that's why he wears the
Yep.
mask. Well, that's
From head to toe.
it's the initial reason he wears the costume, and then
Yes.
we find out what it becomes later on. So, because of this incident and all the stuff they did at St. Mary's, it led to the creation of V, but also led to these people coming into power. So it was
Yep.
almost like a simultaneous thing. It's like, you birthed me while you
Hmm.
were coming into power. So now the thing you birthed is going to take you down. So that's
Yep.
like our premise here. Evie takes shelter with her former boss, talk show host Gordon Dietrich, and this is a great part here.
Yeah, it is.
Um, he shows her his collection of illegal materials, such as some paintings, an antique Quran, and homoerotic photographs. Emboldened by Evie and V, he satirizes Sutler on his show, leading to his and Evie's arrest. This was a really nice moment, and this actor is great. Um, him and Portman just played really
Mhm.
well off of each other, and there was a little moment where he made her the eggie in the basket, and
Yes.
V had made that for her too. So he joked and said, "You got me. I'm V."
Yeah. It, it, it's It's so simple because it's one of the things is like butter. Butter is outlawed.
Right.
So she has V where you got it. So when he makes the same meal, it's like, wait, like, you know, he made V made me the same thing. He's like, oh, well, you caught me. I am V. I am the guy who can do all this great stuff. And it's a funny moment. But again, it's also looking to him into all the things that he does as well that goes quote unquote outside the law. Even it's something as small as having butter.
Right. So yeah, the butter is what made it, and um, also his name is Stephen Fry, uh,
Hmm.
very well known British actor, but um, he also reveals to her like all of this stuff would get me in trouble, but
Oh
that's
yeah.
not, but the thing that would get me killed is because while I have a beautiful woman with me here, that is not the company I prefer. So
Yep.
he reveals his sexuality here and said, no, that's what's going to get me killed.
Yeah.
So um, it was nice because she revealed herself to him because she's on the run. He said, well, I guess I got to reveal something to you. And it was
Hmm.
a nice, trustworthy thing. It's her old boss.
Yeah.
So it's a nice moment there. So they both get arrested. Um, Unfortunately, he gets executed, which we don't find out till later on. This is where the movie changes.
Yes.
So it's starting out. It's this exciting action movie and I guess thriller almost a little bit,
Hmm.
and it's fun.
Yeah.
But now it gets really serious. Evie is captured and she's tortured. She shave,
Oh yeah.
they shave her head. Natalie Portman puts on this amazing dramatic performance. It's playful and fun up until now, but now it's
Yeah.
just straight drama. Um, she, yeah, so she ends up getting tortured, and she just goes through all these things while she's in captivity.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a definite switch in the tone or the execution. Because like you said, up to this point, like being introduced to V, it's exciting, it's fun, action beats, and yeah, he's one step ahead of everybody. There's this and that, and in this one, it gets, I don't want to say it gets dark, but the tone shifts a little bit,
Right.
and it gets much heavier. Even starting with how she witnesses him get taken by the Minutemen, and it's very reminiscent of what she went through as a child, witnessing her parents being beaten and taken as she hid under the bed. And like it almost feels it almost feels scary because now she's back in that same position, and you know what's going to happen to him. You know they're going to kill him. And essentially, like you, as you mentioned, we find out he is killed, and then she's captured, but she's kept alive. So we're like, oh, like what's happening here? And like you said, they torture her for information. They just torture and torture her, and it gets very heavy. And that scene where she shaves her head, it's just a very raw and powerful performance in it. And it's real, and it just adds to the scene. Like she's getting her head shaved, and she's just crying, and right now, like you're in the thick of it. If I could say it that way, like now we're in the thick of it. Like, all right, like the fun aspects of the film are kind of gone in this particular moment. Now it's like, all right, now it's real. How is she going to deal with the situation?
So while she's in her cell, she takes solace in a note hidden in her cell, written by Valerie Page. And it's a woman imprisoned in the cell um, next to V that we don't find out till later, detailing her hopes despite her impending death. And I thought there was a really nice touch when Natalie Portman was done reading the letter, she kissed it.
Yes,
She was
yes.
crying, but because the woman she never met this woman before, but she was just so moved by the letter, she kissed it, and I'd like to think that she did that on her own and the director did not tell her to do
That
that.
would be
So,
that would be really cool if she made that choice, because
yeah,
I think the letter says something like, I haven't met you, I've never seen you, something along the lines, but I love you. Because they like, as she's writing this letter, she knows what's going to happen to her, and
right.
she's making this connection anyway regardless, and she's kind of giving us a backstory on who she was and what led her to where she is now. And again, we're dealing with another situation where she fell in love with another woman, and she had to come out with her parents and everything else, and now she's in the cell writing, she knows she's going to be killed. And it's such a genuine moment from Evie where she's reading it and she's so moved by it, and she's just crying, and like you said, she kisses it. That would be awesome if it was just a choice that she made.
Yeah. So, tortured and facing her own execution, Eva refuses to submit to her captors every time. They always
Hmm.
say, "Just tell us something. Tell us something
Give us
about him.
anything.
We know him. We know that he saved you." Every single time, it's like, "All right, well, we're gonna take you out of the back. I guess you will." I guess
Mhm.
it's time to go. And she is released, but now she sees that she is in V's hideout
Yep.
right next to where she was being captured. So she's confused. It turns out V had intercepted Evie before Creedy's men
Yeah.
and subjected her to false imprisonment so she could learn to live without fear.
Yeah.
He was the one doing this to her the entire time, and she didn't
He
know it.
tortured her, man. He
Yeah,
tortured her.
yeah,
But this is such a great scene because she is obviously somewhat hysterical and upset. And she goes, "You tortured me." And he keeps telling her, "But Evie, you chose to keep going.
right,
You could have ended it at any moment. All you had to do was give any information on me, and you refused to do it. Why?" And she's like, "I can't believe you did that to me." She's crying. He goes, "But it was your choice." And it's such a this is why this sequence was so great because even though she is upset, she just went through this horrible traumatic experience. He's right. I'm not saying like torture people, but I'm saying he's like, no, you chose to keep going. Like you could have easily given them any information about me, but you didn't do it. I want to show you what it was like to be without fear. It's this whole sequence
right.
of them back and forth is
And
fantastic.
he expected her to
Yeah.
crack. And I would have ended. There were times I wanted to end it
Yep.
because
Yep.
I didn't like doing that to you, but you didn't stop it. And
Yeah.
now I know you. Now because of all of this, now I know you live without fear. You're ready to give your life for me,
Yeah.
and that's when I knew you're ready to
Yeah.
live your life
She
without fear.
she has a line where she goes, "I hate you." And he goes, "Yes, that." He goes, "I thought it was hate too, but it's this." And it's odd. Like, man, that whole scene is great, dude.
Yeah. Although initially angry at V, Evie realizes that he has been avenging Valerie, the woman that wrote the letter, and the
Yep.
other Larkhill victims, and promises to return to see him before November the 5th because he lets her go.
Yeah.
And, he lets her know that, unfortunately, Stephen Fry's character died. Gordon, he got
Mhm.
executed, but he saved her.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, hey, listen, I know you're mad at me because for what happened, but I saved your life, you know? But he lets her go. It's like, I can't stay here anymore. It's like, I'm not keeping you anymore. The doors are unlocked. Just please promise to come see me before the 5th of November comes around. And then we finally see a break in emotions from V.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's developed feelings for Evie at this point because
Mhm.
he throws his mask, the mirror breaks, and he starts sobbing. And,
Yeah.
it's a sad moment. It's
It
a
is.
sad moment.
It's like you said, it's kind of the first time we've seen that vulnerability from V. Again, V when he talks, he's very articulate, alliteration, it's poetic. And this is the first time where he shows a bit of emotion that shows him vulnerable as a human being and he's upset. Like you can tell that there has been feelings that have been caught. He is surprised by how strong she is. Not assuming he thought she was weak, but again, as you mentioned, he thought she was going to give in. He wanted to stop. He didn't want to do it anymore. He wanted to continue is because he had developed, a sort of relationship and feelings for her. So when she does leave and he says, "Hey, just promise you'll come back," she goes, "I will." As you mentioned, throws the mask, puts his head down, and just sobs. And you get to see, like, oh, wait a minute. Like at the end of the day, this is a human being. He is a person.
So, to kill the otherwise unreachable High Chancellor, V convinces Creedy to kill Sutler and replace him in exchange for V's surrender. It's like, hey, listen, if
Mhm.
you do what I ask, I will surrender to you. So, as the 5th of November approaches, V has hundreds of thousands of Guy Fawkes masks distributed across the nation, leading to a rise in masked anonymous chaos and
Oh
eventually
yeah.
riots after the
Yes.
secret police kill a young masked girl.
Yep.
Sad moment, by the way. Yeah, that wasn't great.
Very. It's
Yeah,
and this came out in 2006. So I remember
right.
watching it for the first time, and you essentially do see them gun down a child. And that's very hard to watch, even in film. It's very, very hard.
Yeah,
So when you
it's
see
it's
it,
it's like a no-no. That's the thing we don't do. We
yeah,
don't kill kids on film. Right,
yeah, and in such a way where it was like, hey, like she was out there, she had the guy mask on, and she's literally just running through the city.
right.
That's all we see her doing at the moment and she gets shot. And it's like, oh, like that's horrible. And then the people rise up and they're like, we're not gonna let that stand.
So, V shares a dance with Evie. She comes back to see him.
She does.
and, he shares a dance with her, um, before leading to the London Underground he
Mhm.
restored over the previous decade. And, not intending to survive the night, V gives the decision to start the explosive fill train to Evie because he's going to blow up Parliament.
Yep.
And I don't think it's the same exact thing, but the biggest comparison I can give, it's like blowing up the White House. That's the
Yeah,
biggest.
like
It's not the same thing, but that's the biggest
yeah,
comparison I can give.
like, when you think when you think of where they are, you can't help but think of that. You know what I mean? Like it's synonymous with that location. So you can't help but think about it. So for him going after it, it's like again what the whole world kind of associates with that place. And its imagery is vitally important to the nation.
Yeah. So, as they say their goodbyes, he finally reveals his feelings for her. And it was almost like it was like I wanted to teach you some things, but then it was like you taught me some things. It was
Mhm.
really powerful. And she tried to remove his mask when they first had the dance, and then he
Yeah.
said, "No, it's not about the mask. It's not whatever you. If I were to take this mask off, that's not who I am anymore.
It's
This is
not.
who I am."
This is me. This is me.
So,
Yep.
fast forward to where he gives her the decision to pull the lever. um, they have a nice moment where she kisses the mask,
Yes.
and it's really cool, and spoiler alert, he never takes off the mask for the entire movie,
Nope, and I love that. I love that
yeah.
because again, they could have very easily be like, "Hey, we're gonna have a scene." He could remove it really quick for her. It's like, no, no, no. That's his identity now. That's who he is.
So she pleads, that he abandon this crusade and leave with her. This is where
Mhm.
he revealed it's like, "Listen, we can be together,
Yeah.
let's be together, forget all this, let's just run away." So he refuses, and, they say goodbye. um, Creedy meets V and executes Sutler before demanding V unmask, once again,
Yes.
unmasking. Despite being shot and heavily injured, V kills Creedy and his men, stating that the idea he represents is more important than his identity. Could you read that line for me, Ricardo? And
Yes.
if you could
Yes.
put some gusto on it, I really like this
Ooh.
line. It's nice.
It's such a good line. Excuse me. Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Creedy, and ideas are bulletproof. It is
It's such a great response because he keeps pulling the trigger. He's like, "Why
yeah.
won't you die?" And he comes back with this amazing line.
It's true, and I love it because it's about symbolism, right? What the mask represents, what he represents, ideas, execution, all of that. I love everything about it. And he talks about what things are obvious versus what are not obvious. And in this scene, first of all, the scene is just visually fantastic to watch. He's completely surrounded by all these guards, and they're like, kill him, and he takes all these bullets, and you start seeing blood splatter here and there, and you're like, wait a minute, like, is this it? And then once they all run out of ammunition, they all empty their clips, he just takes a couple deep breaths, and he pans up and he says, my turn. And you see him take out all these guards with lethal precision, with nothing but his blades. He's throwing his blades, he's using his blades while lifting people up, slamming them down. And as he mentioned, he goes, when this is all done, he goes, I'm going to end up taking your life. And he's like, well, how are you going to do that? He goes, with my hands around your neck. And that moment where he walks up and he just keeps pulling the trigger. And like you said, he goes, why won't you die? And he ends it with those lines. And one of my favorite things I've ever heard in a movie is like, because ideas are bulletproof. And
Yeah.
I'm like, man, what a powerful line. Because you can, like, basically what he's saying is like, you can kill the man. You can, but ideas, those are bulletproof, and an idea can be spread. It's infectious. It can catch on. It's such a great sequence.
Yeah. Alrighty. So V returns to Evie, and he's despite the abilities that he has, and despite whatever armor he was wearing, he
Mhm.
wasn't fully covered. So
Nope.
some of the bullets got through,
Yeah.
and dying in her arms after admitting he loves her. Um, Finch finds her placing V's body aboard the train so he could be buried accordingly,
Yeah.
but allows her to start it after she affirms that the people need hope. So this man was ready to take her in, shoot her,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. And she said, do what you got to do. I'm still going to pull this lever.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, she explains to him that, don't you see, like, open your eyes, like
Yeah.
whatever she, and it wasn't what she said to him. It was like he saw in her what V saw in her. It was just like,
Mhm.
this woman is willing to die because of the cause. And she says this line where the people need more than a building right now. And this is
Yes.
just a build.
That's all it is. It's just a
And
building, and
for
that's so
whatever
important.
reason, that hit him and he let her do
Mhm.
it. So
It is. It's true. And like I don't know why that line resonates so well because a lot of times it's human nature to become attached to physical items and things of that nature. But there's things more important than that. And I love that she's like the people need hope, you know? And there are other things more important than just this building, these slabs of concrete and everything that are thrown together. It's just a building. You know, these people need hope. And as we saw, all the people are out there in the masks, they're in the hat, they're in the capes, and they're just waiting for this moment. And he looks at her, and like you said, he sees something. He sees something because like he drew his gun, it was ready, and he just okay. And he lets her pull the lever.
so the train starts, and she affirms that the people need hope. So with Sutler and Creedy dead, the military forces in London stand down as
Mhm.
countless citizens dressed as V descend on Parliament and witness its destruction. The
Yes.
overture starts again. We hear Tchaikovsky again. We hear the music, and everything starts blowing up. And Finch asks for V's true identity, to which Evie replies, "He was all of us." She says,
That
oh, such a great line. Yeah,
that one's so good too because she goes, I don't remember the specific order, but she goes, "He was my father, he was my mother, he was my brother, he was my friend, he was me, he was you, he was all of us." And I know that I'm paraphrasing, but it's all of us. And it hits because again, it's about an idea, it's about a symbol. He represents everything in us that we are fighting for. And I love that. And when she looks at him, she goes, "He's you." And again, he's just taking all this information in, and it's like his eyes are being opened to what's happening. And I also, this was such a great touch that when you see the people witnessing the explosion and they all start taking off the masks, you see these characters that are no longer with us. You see Steven, who was killed. You
yeah,
see him. You
yeah.
see the little girl who
It's a
was
good
shot
touch.
take her mask off. You see the what was the woman's name in the cell? I'm sorry.
Valerie.
Valerie. You see Valerie, you see her take her mask off, and you know they're not there. You know that, but it's the representation that we are all like he is us, we are him. Like, it's just it was such a simple thing that it was like, oh, that was so well done. And I really, really love the ending and how they did it, what she said to him, and what they visually showed on screen as she was saying it.
Yeah, let's we gotta say that line here. He was excuse me. He was Edmond Dantes, and he was my father and my mother, my brother, my friend. He was you and me. He was all of us.
Ah, so
So,
good.
that line compared with the people need more than a building right now. It just
Yeah.
Finch that, he's like, you know what? Just go for it. We need a change.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was such a good moment. And
Yeah.
so that's our movie.
Oh, and it is
Yeah,
fantastic.
it still holds up. I think what's my math here? We're looking at
Yeah.
17 years.
Yeah,
Oh, six.
if I had seen this today, like if this was one of those movies, and I like to have fun with that. If this was a movie that slipped through the cracks, I never heard of it, never seen it. I was under a rock, and you showed me today, I wouldn't necessarily think that this movie is 2006. I would just go into this movie, watch it, and enjoy it. Because a lot of times you can watch a movie and a movie can feel dated. Maybe whether it's the script, the writing, whether it's the visuals or whatnot. But this movie, you know, holds up to this day very, very well. Whether it's the subject matter, whether it's the visuals, the action, etc. Like it's all really, really good.
Yeah, for me, it's just a great example of Um, fight the power.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just don't lay down for if your rights are being taken away, don't lay down.
yeah,
And just in the vein of 1984, obviously, it was based on the comic written by Alan Moore, another one. He's the one that wrote Watchmen. And
yeah.
I gotta mention, it's so funny. He doesn't like any of his adaptations.
No, he's
Anytime
always like, "Nope."
yeah, anytime somebody makes something based upon his comic book, he's like, "I hated it,"
And
so
it might be one of those things of like, hey, it's his. Like he's like, oh, it's mine, and someone else is doing it, and they're
yeah,
like even like subtle changes. So he's like, I don't like it, and I'm like, it's okay. Like, hey, he's open. Yeah, it's his stuff. He can like it or not like it. That's completely fine. I loved it. I
yeah,
absolutely love V for Vendetta. It was great.
um,
I also one of the things I like too. There's a line in the movie. I think it's V that says it, where he says that the people shouldn't fear its government. The government should fear its people.
yeah,
And it goes back to what you were saying, where it's like fight the power, like that fight the power. Like don't let them strip away your rights. Don't let them take things away that are important to you. Because there's a lot of things in this movie that they touch upon. One of them was sexuality. You know what I mean? Who you end up loving in your life shouldn't be something held against you, nor should the government be able to inflict punishment upon you. And this government wasn't playing around, man. Like they were like again, they snatched her parents, they snatched her friends, her peers, and they killed them. You're talking about experimentation. You're talking about doing false flags and having attacks and saying, well, this, and then financially gaining off of it. Like there's a lot happening in this movie.
and, clearly, we need to mention the Wachowskis, who
Yeah.
chose Mateague to direct this movie. Their fingerprints were all over this movie,
Oh, you could
from
feel it.
from the casting of Hugo Weaving as V, to the
Yes.
knife choreography, to the fighting, to some of the effects. The Matrix had come
Hmm.
out in '99. So we're looking at 2006. So it wasn't that far after the Matrix, and I want to say a couple of the sequels to the Matrix came out as well. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, good job on the Wachowskis, good job on Mateague, as
Yes.
well. Uh, V for Vendetta was a box office success. It was made for a budget of 50 to 54 million, and it ended up grossing 134.7 million. So
Nice.
definitely made above and beyond what it was uh, made for. Let's give a little love to the cast here.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we have Natalie Portman as Evie Hammond, Hugo Weaving as V. We have Stephen Rea as Chief Inspector Eric Finch. We have Stephen Fry as Gordon Dietrich, and John Hurt
Yes.
as Adam Sutler. And let's give some love to Hurt there, because
I
most of the
love her.
time
I love
he's
her.
just on that big screen in the background. But like you said, just very 1984.
Yes.
That vibe there of just pounding it into the pavement that this is what we need to do. And it's just like, well, what if he succeeds? He will not succeed. Well, what if he does? Well, then I look forward to reading the resignation letter and not the newspaper that morning if he
Yeah.
succeeds. So really good
And her and
stuff.
her is he's a brilliant actor. I
Yeah,
can watch John Hurt in a movie where I absolutely love him, and then another movie like this where I despise him. He's a great actor.
right.
The late great actor. He was fantastic.
So of course, Hugo Weaving, just amazing, absolutely
Yeah.
amazing in this movie. He's I want to say, oh man, this was like fresh off of the Matrix and Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great job from him. One of the best mask performances ever.
Yeah.
Um, and then, of course, your girl Natalie Portman. Like this was
Oh
17,
my god.
like bringing it 17 years ago. This woman's been bringing it her whole career.
Yeah.
But opposite somebody as charismatic as Hugo Weaving. What? By the way, charismatic, and we never get to see his face.
And we never see his face. And like, listen, a lot of people take it for granted. ADR and just voice work in general is not easy, especially when you're watching a screen, you're performing on screen, and then you're trying to recapture the proper cadence to go along with it. It's not an easy thing to do. Voice work is hard. And I remember becoming a fan of him in the Matrix films. Like, man, who's this guy? I didn't know him prior to the Matrix, and he was fantastic. So when Vera Vendetta came out, I was thrilled because I was like, "Ooh, we get to see him in somewhat of a leading man role where we don't necessarily get to see him, but we hear him, and we get to see some of his physicality." And I was just happy to see him in a dominant role. I wish Hugo Weaving, even though, like, he's got this and he's got the Lord of the Rings and whatnot, and we see him periodically, but he's another guy that I wish we saw blow up even more. And I would have loved to seen him more as a leading man because I absolutely loved him in this. Natalie Portman, listen, I love that woman. I've talked about her. She's my favorite actress, and I've never seen a bad performance from Natalie Portman. She just continues to excel and grow ever since she was a child acting in movies like Leon or The Professional, and just watching her grow to movies like, Black Swan and this,
Oh,
and just seeing her commitment. Again, commitment is important too, because again, like that, like shaving your head is not something necessarily anybody just wants to do. And to be able to do it in scene, it's like, we got one shot to do this, okay, and we're gonna go for it. And she nails it. She's fantastic in the movie. Great accent. Great accent. We
yes.
we talked about this. I was trying to catch little slips here and there, not to be malicious, but just kind of like as an actor studying an actor, but like, ooh, I wonder if it's gonna slip up at all. No, man, she holds that accent the entire time, and it's great. And she's up there next to Hugo Weaving, who is a brilliant performer of words, if you will, just the way he speaks, and again, his cadence and his vocabulary. And they're going back and forth, and it's just a delight to hear them speak. So both of those two together on screen, it was magnificent.
Absolutely. So we're going to start winding things down here with some closing thoughts for V for Vendetta. Whenever you see lists for
Mhm.
comic book movies or comic book adaptations, you're bound to see V for Vendetta on that
Oh
list,
yeah.
and rightfully so. This was a time where we were getting a lot of the superhero movies. They
Mhm.
were booming at the time. Spider-Man, X-Men, um, to a lesser degree, Superman Returns had come out at the time, but the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy had kicked off the year before, 2005, with Batman Begins. So we were getting a little bit of everything, and then obviously the I believe Sony, Columbia, those other superhero movies were in the mix, but along comes this DC Vertigo property, V for
Mhm.
Vendetta, and just blows us all away, literally and
Literally.
figuratively.
Literally.
So that's my takeaway. That this definitely still holds up after 17 years, and definitely one of the best comic book adaptations ever.
Yeah. What I loved about V for Vendetta is I wasn't too familiar with the lore prior to the film. I didn't read the graphic novel prior to the film. So I always enjoy when I can walk into something really blind and become more intrigued and want to learn more about it. And this was one of those movies. I also really appreciate a quote unquote superhero film. Some people would call this a superhero film. It is a comic book film, but I like seeing those characters that kind of blur the line a little bit, because again, like, it's what makes the interaction between Evie and V so great, is that when he explains what he does, like, it's somewhat alarming to her. And she goes, and you kill people, and he's like, yes, and you're going to kill people, and he's like, yes, and she's like, that's wrong, and she even betrays him at one point. And I like that. I like when I can watch a movie where our lead character, who is, bent on a code and doing what he think needs to be done, but it blurs the line a little bit, and it makes you kind of sit back and kind of, see where you are, because not everything is black and white. There's a gray area, and I like movies that explore that aspect. And this movie, I feel like, this movie came out in 2006. But I think it's one of those movies that holds up really well. Again, I feel like if someone watched this today, they wouldn't question whether or not this is a quote unquote older movie, or a movie that came out 15, 17 years ago. They just walk away appreciating the story that was told. Again, the choreography is great. You feel the Wachowskis. You just feel the blueprint. Look, they made bullet time a thing, and it was
Right.
awesome, and they incorporated that with the blades, and you see like the visual effects with the blades, just to add some some nice spice to it, some flavor. And it's really great, and I'm glad that they were able to bring Hugo Weaving to this project. Again, I've been a fan. I would love to see him do more lead roles and whatnot. But again, I love the film. for, the action, of course, and the suspense and thrills and whatnot. But I really liked what the movie was saying. Again, where, don't let things that don't let those things be stripped away, and I love the idea of things. And when I say the idea, I mean what he's talking about, like ideas are bulletproof. And I love that notion. It's one of the reasons why, and not to get sidetracked, but when we talk about like Batman is a symbol. And I
Right.
love that notion. It's a symbol. And I love that V kind of approaches that same mentality where he talks about things. He's like, I'm an idea. And ideas are bulletproof, and you see it's infectious. You see it growing amongst the people. You see it grow with Evie. You see it grow with Detective Finch, and I love that. And I love that about this film. So there's a lot for me to take away and enjoy. And like you said, it's kind of hard for anybody, I think, to talk about best comic books out there and to leave this off the list. To some people it might be really high, to some people might be in the middle, and that's fine. But it has to be at least spoken about at some point when you're talking about great adaptations and great comic book films. And I loved it then, and I love it now. And that is a testament to just how good that film really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we do have to put it out there. If you haven't seen it in a while, or you haven't seen it, obviously check it out. But read the graphic novel too. It's a solid
Yes.
graphic
Yes.
novel, definitely. Alrighty, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for V for Vendetta. Remember, the 5th of November.
Yeah.
If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd appreciate it. As always, those subscribes go a long way in helping our reach. And if you could please let us know in the comments below how you felt about our breakdown and how you felt about V for Vendetta, and Hugo Weaving's performance, Natalie Portman's performance, and just the movie in general as far as a comic book adaptation. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.